And we are live. Hello and welcome to Developer Insights. I'm David.
And I'm Justin.
And of course, together we are the leads on game development and design here at Codename. At least we are since the last time I checked.
We also founded Codename, so assumedly we'd be able to keep those jobs.
No, we have to ask our bosses. Anyway, we are your hosts for this episode and for every episode.
Because when we're not here, the show doesn't happen.
So far, so true. So true? Nope. Anyway.
Wow, we really suck when we go off script. Today is our 38th episode.
Does that mean all our questions are on script? Anyway, in this episode, we will be answering each question in a different language.
How are we supposed to do that? I mean, I only speak one language. I guess two if you count Klingon.
Wait, but I thought you translated the game into several different languages.
Wait, I thought you did that.
Oof. Well, maybe we paid professional translators to do it.
That sounds like that would have been a good idea.
Oh, kapla.
Anyway, we are here to answer your development and design questions about Idle Champions.
And if you don't ask any questions, however, you may have to suffer through Justin's one-man reenactment of the entire 1980s D&D cartoon series.
Oh, and it's not going to be pretty.
That's okay. My understanding is that's not a word that was generally used to describe the original cartoon.
Oh, ouch. I didn't think it was that bad for the time.
I mean, actually, to be honest, I can't say I've actually seen the show. It was both before my time, and we didn't have a TV that got more than one channel before I was 12, so...
Oh, well, get it on YouTube, my friend. It's there in all of its glory. Also, apparently the overlay code is wrong.
What?
Did not update it, my friend.
Oh, I was in the middle of updating that. All right, we'll get that in just one moment. At any rate, we have pulled some questions from the previous show that we didn't get to, and we'll answer some of those while waiting for new questions to come in, as well as I do have some updates on the tech related items that we take a note of each stream. However, today I didn't get a full update before we started. So I have an abridged list, and I'll make sure to get a full update one for next time. But for today, we are still working on testing out the new shop. As many of you have been noticing, we are still making changes to that. Hopefully all those changes are coming in as improvements, but if we make changes to that and you have feedback on that, please report it. Let us know in the Discord channel for the shop feedback. We are still reading all of the input from that and are continuing to make adjustments based on it. The objective detail on the multi-party display showing the target area, that's getting worked on right now, and working on getting in some additional feats for the Briv skip cap is also underway. But that is the end of my abridged list, unfortunately. So I just have to move on to the questions. And while we start on that, I'm going to update the overlay. But I guess first question here is for you, Justin. So the first question left over from last week's show is from Yoda Ate My Head. The question is there a reason Seat 9 still doesn't have an 8th champion? Some have a 9th already, but that slot seems seriously neglected.
Yeah, well, first off, I'm sorry that Yoda ate your head. That's too bad. So we do talk about this every once in a while on the show, sort of how difficult it is to slot champions into seats. It's something that we spend a bunch of time on every time we're designing a new event champion or a new evergreen champion. And it's actually really hard because there's a lot of different things that come into play there. There's sort of what champions are already in that seat. Are there champions from recent events in that seat that we don't want to immediately be replacing or overshadowing? Are there champions in that seat from the same affiliation as the champion we're looking for a seat for? Are there already a bunch of, is a seat got a whole bunch of warriors already and we don't want to put another warrior in there? So it ends up usually that we only have maybe one or two, sometimes if we're lucky, three sort of eligible slots for each event champion. And sometimes we have a seat that it's just really hard to fit another champion into. And so we have to kind of wait a couple of events before we can find one that'll fit. But in general, we try and keep the seats pretty even. And I think there's some seat 9 or a seat 9 champion coming up pretty soon, but don't quote me on that.
Cool. Looks like
Also,
I got the code
if
fixed.
If my voice sounds really weird, it's because I'm streaming from home because I'm sick and I might sniff a bunch. I might go because my nose is stuffed.
Well, hopefully you can get some ideal mute button timing on that, but...
Shoot, I should get my mute button out. Uh-huh.
And not do what I suggested earlier, which was muting yourself between the sniffles.
Yes. All right, let's move on to some more questions.
Next question here is from JDog2773. And this question is, how far off are we from getting the eye-level refunds on capped slots?
The eye-level refunds on capped slots is something that we are hoping to do, I believe, as part of the when we eventually do the Briv and human adjustments. So it's something that we want to do as a bit of a, we have to do this thing that, we don't really want to do and you guys don't really want us to do, but here's some eye-level refunds as well to hopefully take a bit of the edge off of that. So that is that's the timing of that, and hopefully we can get that in there. Let's see. The next question in the list of questions from last show is from Nebelius, and they ask a question that we've got fairly often, but they ask, is it possible to make a champion occupy 2 slots at the same time? I assume formation slots, not bench slots, and therefore be more powerful than the others. What are your thoughts on champions that contain two or more
slots?
2 formation slots.
I didn't say 2 or more. They just said 2. But 2 or more is a question that we do occasionally get. I think last stream this might have been the second sort of iteration of this particular question. I think it's a neat idea. I think we say that every time we see this. It would be a fun thing to do, but it does come with a bunch of complications on how that ends up working in the formation. As well as that the slots themselves are not always equidistant apart, so it sort of adds a tricky bit there as to where they're being placed, and then it also raises questions around how all the adjacency on that would work. But I mean, I've always thought it was a cool idea, but I think it comes with a lot of technical challenges that we'd have to sort out before we could do something like that. So like I said, I think in the fullness of time, I would love to see that. But I don't know what you think, Justin. You're going to prioritize that one at some point?
I think it's really hard. I mean, we had a lot of asks for even like a normal champion like Dungeon Master, or not normal, but a champion like Dungeon Master being able to bring other champions into the game. Like that broke a lot of rules that the game was kind of based on. And so I would hesitate to ask the dev team to do something quite so big too soon, but never say never. I think it'd be really, really cool, but I just don't know if I want to face the dev team and ask them that kind of tech.
All right, moving on to the next question. This one is from Seawolf177. Seawolf asks, when doing the trials rework, can you make it so the party starts automatically when filled so the leader doesn't have to start it manually?
Yes, this is an easy question. This is one of the things that is on the list for the trials rework, is to do exactly that. As soon as the party fills up, it can start automatically. That would be an option that the leader would be able to sort of tick. And the next question from the Lurking Writer from last week's episode is, any chance of changing the terminology of skin to something less creepy? Options could be outfit or appearance. I know skin is succinct and to the point, but it can cause issues when taken even remotely out of context.
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's come up internally. I know there's been some discussion around that, and I know Chris Dupuis is keen on the word outfit. I think sort of all around the term skin has been it's a fairly I want to say the word I'm on my tip of my tongue is industry, but it's not that. It's like the games in general, like that's usually what they're referred to, or there's a deep ingrain of that as the terminology for for a skin, for an outfit, for the change of appearance of a character. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard midstream to change the full terminology on it, but I don't know. I'd be curious to know how many times people have taken it out of context. I mean, when you start to think of it as like their skin, then it does start to get a little bit creepy. Certainly not a way I've thought about it before, though. It sort of doesn't. It's certainly not what comes to mind, but.
It's interesting because I think that when we were initially designing the system for champions to have skins, I think we initially, like, even externally, we were calling them like outfits or costumes or something like that. But internally, we were calling them skins, like in the database tables and whatnot. And
oh no!
And it's just. I think for some reason the skin name just kind of translated back out into the client somehow, and so it's just it's like you say, it's so ubiquitous that it's hard to kind of move the needle on that.
Yeah, I'm seeing a note here. Well, both the chat is mentioning it, and on Mars is noted in our doc here that using the term once used the term skin collector and never heard the end of it for months. Hopefully that we're not rekindling that. Please don't make that the case.
Sorry, but Snobigger's already on it.
Yeah. But then I start thinking what the other uses are, and like a common one is like things for like your phone, like a phone skin, or I guess like dbrand skins, for example, a company that makes skins for laptops and for other, like, that's the term for, I don't know.
It's tough because it's not just replacing like the sort of film on the outside, right? It's sort of like new clothing, and like in the case of our sort of skins or outfits or whatever, like it could be, changing even just the race of the character. So
yeah, I mean that's sort of thing when if you put on some of the characters, it changes, like it's a costume, it changes what tattoos they have and what appear, like it's all a full visual appearance change. So it's hard to use just the word costume, doesn't always cover it, and then outfit doesn't always cover it. Yeah,
it's a tough one. I want to comment on something else someone asked in chat while you were responding there. While you were answering that question, I think there was a truck backing up in the parking lot outside of your place, and so someone asked, which one of you two is at a construction site? Ironically, the truck backing up was I think on David's side, but I actually live in a neighborhood that's being constructed, so I technically live in the construction site, but that was on Dave's side. So
fair enough.
No beeping here.
Yeah. So I think on the skin thing, if we could find if there was a good word that was all-encompassing that could replace it, then we could consider that. But I'm not sure that the options that have been presented sort of cover all the bases. We'll just have to try not to think of it as creepy. Don't go to the creepy place immediately. All right. Moving into new questions from this week. First question here is from Emmett, or Emote. Oh, shoot, he corrected me last time.
We talked about this last week.
It's Emote with 2 M's.
That's correct.
I recently learned that Zorbu gets accelerated stat gains in offline progress, approximately 5 times. He seems to be the only stacking champion that does that, though. What is the reason for this unique behavior, and is it likely to be extended to others?
Yeah, so I think we've talked about sort of offline progress before and sort of how it functions. And the reason that Zorbu has this unique behavior is because a developer would have had to go in and specifically add this behavior to Zorbu in the offline progress handler. And the reason that other champions don't have this kind of thing is because no one has gone in and added that specific behavior to the offline progress handler, because it's a bit of a pain in the butt to actually do it for every single champion in a way that is kind of balanced and makes sense. It's the same, partially the same reason why most speed champions don't do anything in offline progress. It is something we want to fix sort of moving forward and try and go through and make sure that as much as possible works in offline progress, because we absolutely appreciate that not everyone is able to leave their PlayStation or their phone on 24/7 like PC players can. And so it is something that we want to make a lot better.
It's also a waste
overall.
of energy. Leave your PlayStation on all.
That's true. So it's something we want to improve over time, and sort of expand out to everyone, or as much as we can that makes sense. But it's unique to just a couple of champions right now.
All right. Next question here is from Kuvu Plan, asking, in a variant that excludes a patron, such as con less than or equal to 12, can we now have the option to do that Vajra patron variant with Dungeon Master and a special guest star?
Yeah, this is an interesting suggestion. Maybe, I guess, is the answer. Maybe that makes sense to open up some of those variants that weren't previously allowed. Yeah, I mean, I think for the con less than the 12 one, that could potentially make sense. For some of the other ones that are locked out, like the Minx one that's locked out, or there's an Ashara one specifically that's locked out of Mert, or no, maybe it's the other way. Yeah. Ones that require a certain champion in the formation, those ones we probably wouldn't open up just because you could put Dungeon Master and someone else in there. But ones that they're based on con, yeah, maybe. I'll have to think about that a little bit.
All right.
Someone's saying that your green screen looks much better than mine. It really looks like there's an office behind you.
Yeah, the trick is to get that perfect green and then a really high resolution camera. And I almost put your basement behind me today as a.
You have done that before.
All right. Next question here from Feral Storm 201. What is the communication and design philosophy considered in relation to highly popular characters getting nerfs? The Ashara nerf feels totally out of the blue and will only affect new mid-level players while not affecting high-level players at all, and players are now questioning which character is next. Will it be Krond? Will it be Artemis? Who knows?
Yeah, so this is a good question. I think obviously the Ashara nerf was not well received, and I don't blame players for that. Nerfing champions is something that we've stated many times is not something we like to do at all. It's not something we want to do, and it's not something we do very often. We were chatting about this earlier today, and I think the number of times we've intentionally nerfed a champion is I could probably count them on one hand. I think it's only 2 or 3 or I think only 2 or 3 champions that we've ever actually intentionally nerfed. We've had a couple of sort of unintentional nerfs where we've fixed a bug that was causing a champion to be OP. But direct intentional nerfs are something we just don't do very often, and it doesn't feel good, from your sides or from our side. And so I think that trying to communicate stuff ahead of time is something we try to do. We've sort of communicated that there's some upcoming changes for Briv and Human. So trying to sort of take the bite off of those by letting you know that stuff is coming out a bit faster. The Ashara change kind of got thrown in a little bit at the last minute in terms of throwing it into the balance update that we were doing earlier in the week. Not at the exact last minute, but pretty late in the process. So I think it's something we can do better to sort of communicate what's coming and just check in and make sure that we're not doing something that's completely going to just be 100% universally not very well received. And we do try and listen to the feedback. So there were some good suggestions about some other ways that we could affect Ashara. And in the end, we did choose to put halflings back into the short folk spec, as well as keeping them in the half and half spec. We're just trying to open up the options that were available for the second specialization. But I think there's still a lot of good feedback about Ashara, and I think that she is still usable, but you might have to change up the champions that you take with her, and and we'll continue to evaluate that as well. There's also, we mentioned, I think, in some of the communication that we did yesterday, that we're looking at putting in a way to essentially reset champions that we nerf, and take any sort of item levels and shiny potions and legendary items and stuff that time that you've spent investing in a champion, let you get that back if we happen to nerf the champion and you don't want to use them anymore. Giving you a way to get that time and effort back is something that we think will help to take the bite off of that. Because at the end of the day, we do, for the health of the game, sometimes we just mess up and we make a champion that's too OP, and they just kind of shift the meta in a way that is not healthy for the long term of the game. And so one of the things we need to be able to do is do that, and we need to be able to do it in a way that is not going to really devalue the investment that you've put into those characters.
One thing I would comment on, just as we're talking about this, because sort of the full design of how a champion reset or respec type system will work is still something that we're working out the details on. One comment to the language that I would adjust, Justin, is that I think also it's not just a nerf, but if it's a significant enough change to the way that champion functions, that'll be something that we'll make available to players. So it's not just in our opinion that we've made it worse, or that we've pulled back the power that champion has, but also if it's functionally changed enough that you might have prioritized it because you were using it for a particular purpose, and we functionally changed that, then that seems to me like a good reason to make that option available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other thing I would mention, because I saw some chat about this yesterday in the Discord, this sort of reset ability would only be granted for champions that we make adjustments to and that we enable it on. So you wouldn't be able to just reset whatever champions you want whenever you want to get your stuff back from it. It'd be very specific and very targeted. And we would want to do some stuff with golden epics. But as we say, the details of that are not 100% hammered down yet. So we'll talk more about that. We'll talk more about that in the future as we get closer to enabling that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, next question is from Doorbell.
No, I kind of addressed that in the last one.
All right, we're moving on to the next one. The next question is from Canelian. Is it just me, or does the Dungeon Master's sprite seem pretty small compared to all others in the game? Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, I think, unless it's another bug like we
didn't
did
screw
with
up
Desmond,
again, did we?
I think he was just made small because he's quite small in the cartoon, and so I think they were just the artists were just trying to match that. We did have an issue with Desmond a couple of months ago, where his character model was too big, and I believe we fixed that. But I believe Dungeon Master is just a tiny little small guy.
I think we're gonna in the future just having to end up with like a big lineup, like the kind you'd have at a police station, like with all the champions, like the heights.
I'm pretty sure they do something like that already. So.
Okay, moving on. Next question is from Warlock DBA. Not even sure if this belongs here. The leaves I get for this event, if I do not use them all before the event ends, will they be here next year?
That's a great question. I love these kind of questions because they're pretty straightforward. If you don't spend your leaves or your event tokens before the end of the event, no, they are not available again next year. Your tokens will reset to 0 next year. So be sure to spend them all before the event ends. You can buy extra chests in the store, or you can run some extra free plays before it ends, but try and spend as much as you can before the event ends.
Okay, let's see. Next question here is from Foolish Genius 89. Is Dungeon Master and the special guest going to be refactored into how limiting future variants are going to be?
You added the word "re" in front of factored.
Did I? Oh, well, all right. Will be factored in to how limiting future variants are going to be.
It probably won't necessarily change our philosophy in terms of what we do for future variants. I mean, it'll obviously be a consideration that we will have to have going forward. And it's a sort of, before we even did it, we kind of looked back and made sure that it wasn't going to super break anything. It's why there's, some edge cases where DM is actually not available in an adventure. For example, I believe there's one variant where Ashara is forced into the formation, and you can't use Dungeon Master or Special Guest Star in that adventure. So, there's stuff like that we made sure was going to work properly. And moving forward, it'll always be a consideration that Dungeon Master can bring other champions in, but it's probably not going to change our philosophy on how we sort of put variants together all that much. Do you want me to do the next question here?
I think we mostly covered
we did mostly
that question.
Cover.
There was a question here from OG17 asking about the frequency, or asking about some of what we had in mind for the character resets, as well as I think for frequency on that.
You can ask him. I'll just go through it.
Sure. The question was, what do you have in mind for character resets? Resources are less of an issue than time, seeing as how there's only one forge a week. Would we see legendary token resources like Crusaders of the Lost Idols? How would resets work for evergreen characters, and what limits would resets have? Is it something you planned on monetizing?
Right. So let's see. I'll sort of start from the end and work my way forward. So what limits would resets have? We touched on that. It would be specific to kind of champions that we'd choose. It wouldn't be something you could just do willy-nilly, because there's a whole bunch of balance issues with that. There's both balance issues with that in terms of you could pump up an evergreen character with gold and silver chests and then reset to sort of get all their item levels off again. Which is not something we want to allow because it feels really icky. The other thing is if we kind of let you reset any champion whenever you want, we'd get into a kind of meta that the sort of optimal way to play would be to have like 10 characters worth of stuff, focus all your stuff on those 10 characters, and then whenever you needed to use a different character, you would just reset that character and buff up the other character you wanted to use. And that gets it's not something we want to do in the game because it gets super manual, and it starts to feel like a requirement to have to like move all your stuff over to another character and max in that way, and it's not something that is really fun. So we wouldn't want to allow that. How would resets work for evergreen characters? They would probably work the same way they do for other characters, and since we would be controlling when they would be available, it probably wouldn't be a huge issue. Yeah, there's a little bit of an issue there, but it's not an enormous issue, I don't think. And for legendaries, time, definitely I appreciate that time is a concern there, and so I think that we probably would do something where it's some sort of free forge or free upgrade kind of token that could be used in the legendary system, as opposed to just refunding the favor and the scales of Tiamat that you use to do those crafts, because yeah, you're right, the time would definitely be a factor there. And I think that's pretty much it. I mean, we're basically, the philosophy of it is we want to take everything that you've invested in that champion and let you invest it in a different champion if you so choose, and giving you as much sort of leeway to do that as we can, without disrespecting the time that you took to put into that champion. Next.
All right. Next question here is from Volkas. In the missions with stat restrictions, please mark eligibility with plus stat feats champions only as available.
Please mark eligible with plus stat. Oh, I see. Yes. So this is like on the bench, if there's a champion that is unavailable for a variant or adventure, if they would be available with a plus stat feat, indicate that in some way. I think that's a great idea. I think it's potentially a bit of a challenge to do, but I think we could probably do that. I feel like it's something we've kind of put on the list before, or sort of said we should put on the list. But I'm going to just highlight that one and see if we can get that onto the list moving forward. Not necessarily saying it will be done anytime soon, but I think it's a great quality of life improvement. Let's see, the next question here is for you, Dave. It's from Zephyroth Snow. Zephyroth Snow? And they ask, do you plan to adapt the UI, the user interface, for mobile? I installed it on my mobile device, assumedly, but it's very difficult to use.
So the short answer to this one is no. No, we don't have any plans to change up the UI specifically for mobile, and it definitely can be more difficult on smaller screen phones, especially high resolution smaller screen phones. The long answer is initially we actually hadn't planned to release it for mobile, but it ended up getting out, or at least mobile on phones. Mobile for tablets was fine, but mobile on phones, the reason it ended up being released is there was a snafu with, what was it, the Galaxy Note 9, I believe, was first qualified or classified as a tablet, and then Google went and changed that to classify it as a phone, and this ended up with a bunch of stranded players who had downloaded it and were playing it on the Galaxy Note 9 who suddenly couldn't get updates because it had switched. And so that is why there is a warning at the beginning that says the UI is designed for larger screen devices, and your experience may vary. Some of the background on that is we did with the previous game, which is very similar in setup if you haven't played it, Crusaders of the Lost Idols, do a mobile adaptation, and it turned out to be not only just redoing the UI so that it would work with mobile is just an enormous undertaking, and it then means that there would be not one but two but three UIs that we had to keep up to date with any changes that we made, which of course adds to the time to get new features out. But what we found with the Crusaders one is that a lot of the things that we wanted to have all on the screen at the same time, we couldn't when making everything larger for mobile, and this led to things being on different pages or scrolling back and forth to see things, which actually made the whole experience of playing the game more difficult and sort of less easy to understand what everything was happening. So it's a challenge on a number of different layers, and so we basically for the UI for the mobile for this, we decided we would release it as it was and see how it went. And I mean, quite a few people do play on the mobile and have, I mean, assumedly a fairly reasonable experience because they keep playing. But unfortunately, tackling a redesign for the UI for that, both from designing it so that it works with everything being larger on the smaller screen, as well as having three UIs to keep up to date instead of just two, is something that really isn't very feasible for us at this point. So plans to adapt the UI for mobile are not on the table right now. Now, that said, we did recently look at some of when we load up the game on mobile, mobile devices have surprisingly high resolution screens, and so we do scale the game to fit based on the screen resolutions that are there. And I was recently made aware by one of our artists here, Adam, who loaded it up on his phone, which is a newer phone, and it's an extremely high resolution small screen, and it was actually the scaling that we were doing was way out of whack. He couldn't even barely read the message that said, hey, this isn't designed for small screens. So a pass on that is planned to at least make sure that we're providing the optimal size view that we can, even though we're not planning to actually adjust the UI.
Cool. It looks that we are about to start a giveaway on the stream. So for those of you who haven't been here before, open up that chat. I assume this is only on Twitch and not on Steam if you're viewing there. And type the running into chat, you will be entered for a chance to win 42 chests of your choice. You get to choose what type of chest you want. You could choose a gold chest. You could choose a Modron components chest. You could choose a specific champion chest. You could choose the silver chest, I guess, if you didn't really want any loot. You could also, what else could you choose? You can't choose a Bahamut chest from the Trials of Mount Tiamat, but you can choose any other type of chests. So supply chests, you get a lot of potions if you want that. So anyway, open up chat, type in the running, and you will be entered for a chance to win that. And I am assuming that only works on Twitch, but I am not 100% sure. Maybe a moderator can verify that for me. Let's go on to the next question, which is actually way up here.
Where now? Oh,
question 20.
Did I highlight that?
It was highlighted in blue before.
I saw that, but I don't think that's a question that I have a good answer for.
Well, you can ask me.
We can talk about it and see if there's So this question, which we're not 100% sure we got a good answer for or not, here is from JDog2773 asking about time gates. The question is, with one highly public streamer saying they don't bother with time gates anymore, can something be done to make them more relevant to the end game players?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, I think the reason I don't do time gates anymore is just there's a lot of kind of manual work to run through them. And I do wonder, I mean, I think every game kind of gets to the point where the best sort of quality of life feature is to automate some sort of tasks that you could just do, but you don't have time for. And I think time gates are something where if you want to do sort of the 3 adventures and you want to do, you know, a bunch of silvers, that it just takes a bunch of time. So I kind of wonder if there's a point at which we can kind of just try and find a way to make time gates take less time to go through once you've reached a certain point in the game. You know, maybe there's like a favor cost or a gold cost or a gem cost or something you can pay to kind of upgrade your time gate and make it a little bit easier to use, a little bit less, you know, having to do 4 or 5 adventures to max out your bonuses from it. That might make it a little bit easier to use. I don't know. I'm kind of spitballing here.
Yeah.
None of this is like,
I mean, I guess the question, without having the context of the original statement, sort of what the question would, I assume, would be around gearing up a champion, which is be a little different than like it as a way to get the hold of a champion for the first time. Mm-hmm. Because certainly if you have them all and you're looking at but if you don't have them, so then the question just becomes how quick, if you have all the champions that you need and you want to gain additional equipment for them, was there a faster way, a way you could spend more resources and less time? Because with so many of them, it can be quite a slog if you're going to try and get through them all.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think it's primarily a time issue.
Yeah. So the question is,
it doesn't warrant the time it takes to get them.
What are they doing as an alternative? Or are they just not upgrading those champions?
I assume they're just stacking up. I assume they're just stacking up time gate tokens and just not running them, which is certainly what I've done on my account at this point. Right,
but I guess what I'm asking is, was there an alternate strategy to gearing up the champions, or are they just not gearing them up?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think tuning into this stream and just putting in the code and you get an Electrum chest, that can certainly be one way to gear up champions.
I see in the chat there's just in gem farming.
Blacksmithing contracts from gem farming, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, well, I mean, I think there's probably something we can do there down the road, but I think we've got a bunch of other stuff kind of planned between now and when that would happen.
Next question.
Next question is from Hoopla Zoopla. That's a fun name to say. Who asks, when will the Nerds champion appear in the shop?
That is a very good question.
I believe the Nerds champion is in shop 3.
It is, to my knowledge, but the question the question translates into when will there be a wide release of shop 3? And at this point, shop 3 is something that we're spending quite a bit of time making sure that it has all of the features that Shop 2 had in terms of just being usable, that it presents you with all of the items that are in each pack, obviously, without having to dig through them, which I think makes it more difficult to use. So some of that is being looked at. There's a handful of performance tweaks being made to it so that scrolling through doesn't have any delays. I know that was a start. It started off with that, and I know that makes just using it a little less pleasant. And then just adjusting some of the colors. I know a big feedback from players was that these colors were not sort of in line with the rest of the game, and so we're looking at actually adding an option that just turns that off if that is not to your taste. So that's coming soon as well. So when we've sort of got a handle on that, and then we feel like that's in a really good place, we'll be rolling that out more broadly, and that's when, broadly speaking, the Nerds Champion will appear in the shop. Now, if that takes too long, I think we could certainly make if we end up on a long tail on that one, we could hop it over and add it to Shop 2, I think, but.
So fun. Somebody in chat is asking, Shop 3, Shop 2, what? Which is a good point, because we're used to talking about these things internally. Shop 3 is the brand new shop that is available to some players on Steam and Epic. It's the one that initially when we released it looked like a unicorn threw up on it. Looks better now. Shop 2 is the one that is widely available to everyone who does not see Shop 3. And we don't talk about Shop 1 anymore.
No. We don't go to Shop 1. We don't talk about Shop 1.
Let's see. Next question. An actual question from Maniac Clown. They say the game's been running much worse for me lately without me having changed anything other than updating my video drivers a couple of days ago as an attempt at a solution. Is there a reason on the back end it's been chugging like a frat boy for me, or do I need to look more deeply at my system?
So it is entirely possible that something's been introduced that's making the game run slower. I know I've seen various comments on the Discord that makes it sound like that might be the case. I would suggest opening up a ticket with the formation that you've been running that's causing issues, and in this particular case, I would actually say flag it and ask the support person you get, which is either Sean or Taylor, to pass it on to me, and I'll take a look at it and just see. I'll just run it in I'll run it off the side of my desk in a debug window and watch the performance on it, see what we're looking at, just because that hasn't been done in a while, and I would not be surprised if something's been introduced that's making things a little bit slower. So yeah, submit that, and I'll take a look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely something that we do from time to time. It's just do those passes and see what kind of leaks or whatnot have been introduced into the game in the last half dozen champions or so.
Yeah, I mean, every champion comes with half a dozen new abilities and effects, and we release a champion every 3 weeks, and after a while those, it's easy, one or two small oversights in one of those abilities, and it adds up, and it can be a problem. So
yeah, someone there saying they see a degradation over time, that could definitely be something that a new champion is doing. So we'll pass those on to
yeah, I mean, a degradation over time is a very strong indicator that something is building up. Something's not getting properly released, and it's building up, and that'll show if I run that in the profiler for a few hours. So yeah, pass that on to me.
Sean says, "Give me your saves."
Awesome.
Alrighty, next question.
Next question here is from Raphael, 90,340. How's that? Sure. After the Ashara bond changes, any chance you guys reallocate the exotic champions in seat 11, Warden Nova, or Ariza, Dragonbait, and Rush to other seats?
Rust.
It says Rush.
I know. Okay, so yeah, this is a question about whether to reallocate champions to different seats. It's a great question about whether we would ever move champions between seats. Holy crow, if I think we caught flack for changing Ashar, I think we would get quite a bit of flack for moving champions around in seats. That's why I've often joked about doing it, but never actually seriously considered it. It could be something that down the road is important for the game, that we add more seats. And if we were to add more seats, we would probably distribute a couple of champions or potentially all champions around to reallocate them between all of the available seats. The challenge with adding a new seat and just adding it, say like adding event champions into that seat, is that you end up having seats that only have one event or one champion in them at some point, which is not really great for the game when you've got like 8 or 9 champions available in every other seat. Or oh, excuse me, my voice. If you try to do that kind of over the course of multiple events, and you just add a champion per event to that seat, you're just kind of well, as soon as you add the next event, you're kind of making the previous event champions not as useful because they're in the same seat as the newest champion you're adding. So there's a bunch of challenges with moving champions around in seats. It's, like I say, it's probably something we'll have to do at some point. If we start to think about it, we'll give you guys a lot of notice so you can prepare yourselves.
All right. Next question is from SailNet. Question is, can a champion have more than one affiliation?
I believe yes. I think that Arcan is both a member of Force Grey and the Dark Alliance. I think he's the only champion that is in 2 affiliations, though I could be wrong there. But I believe we do support that, so that is a thing.
All right. Next question. This one is from Cornelian. So last week you gave a list of the champions that you were thinking about buffing, and it seems that of the evergreens, Xeraphon was dropped and Delina was buffed instead. Have any other changes to the list of event champions to be adjusted happened after the list was originally mentioned?
Yeah, so there have been some changes to that list, mainly based off of your guys' feedback after the last episodes. And I should clarify also as well, I was minorly wrong about where the list came from. It's not just the champions who were in the sort of bottom 30%. It also included some champions who had specialization choices that were way off whack. So, for example, Makos was in there not because he was low usage, but because his gold/DPS spec I think was only used about 20% of the time, and his support spec was used about 80% of the time. So that's why a bunch of his buffs were focused around basically just improving his DPS and gold find in his gold spec to try and make that spec a little bit more interesting for players to consider. Now, some of the other champions that were in that list were in there for various other reasons that I don't really have at hand right now. But we have made some adjustments to who's in that list. Unfortunately, I don't have a list of who we've adjusted to put in there. But there were definitely some of the feedback that we got from you guys after the sort of list we gave out last year was taken into consideration, and will be acted upon as we get to those years of champions.
All right.
Let's go into the next question here. The next question is purple, so I will ask it. From JDog2773. He says, with the game going more and more global with localization arriving, what avenue can players use to ask devs questions and get responses when schedules don't allow for watching a stream live, or this stream live specifically?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a tricky one. I know I feel like this is alluding a little bit to I've seen some desire for the ability to seed some questions, players to have some questions asked in advance, which is something that I've always kind of been on the fence about in terms of how that would work, as well as sort of how much time that could end up eating into, because certainly we don't find we get to all the questions here. Obviously, we're probably about halfway through the questions that we've received, and we've got a whopping 5 or 6 minutes left for questions. So that's something that would have to be carefully balanced. And it's also balanced against the time that we're spending, away from working on time that goes into the game. While I definitely think it's, very important to be able to get out here on stream and answer questions for people, as well as often it's a lot of fun to do so. We do have to be careful that we don't spend all of our time answering questions rather than actually getting stuff done. Even though, of course, as we mentioned, a lot of what Justin and I do is design and decision making and that sort of thing, rather than doing the bulk of the heavy lifting at this point. That said, it is something that I'm keeping my eye on in terms of if it makes sense, whether or not we, for example, made this stream a little bit longer to accommodate some of that, or whether we did take in some questions in advance. But it's not something that, at least from my perspective, that I want to take action on right at this time. But it is something that I've had my eye on, just because I know there are, as I said, the players have asked for the ability, I've got a question now, if I could put it in the list, then it would get answered, and then you could obviously come back and watch the VOD later and see what the answer was, especially if we had a segment which was questions that were left, for questions from the Discord or something like that. But I think it would need further thought. I don't know, Justin?
I thought you were going to suggest a 1 a.m. our time stream that's the exact same format as this, but with whiskey.
1 a.m.? I don't know, maybe 10 p.m. I can do this 1 a.m. thing.
No, I'm in bed by 10 p.m., but, around 1 a.m. is when Ellie wakes me up.
Okay.
So I'm happy to get up then. I'm already awake.
Right.
There just might be a crying baby in the background, and a rather a bad-looking me in the foreground.
Well, we'll save that one. The 1 a.m. stream we'll save for Extra Life.
Anyway, more seriously, I think I think finding a way to address that as we do, have more people from the EU or from Asia who want to ask us questions, it's certainly something we'll have to take into consideration.
Okay, moving on.
Yes, the next question here, we are running low on time. Next question here from Longtime Lurker. They ask, the collection screen and blessing screen have left and right arrows to move through the champions or favor types, but no wraparound. So if I want to go all the way to one end, I have to go through everything. Is there a reason it is the way it is? I feel like this is where we post the Michael Scott meme of...
that's a... as far as just a quality of life update, having the ability to go from the top to the bottom and the bottom to the top with a reverse on the arrows does seem to me like a perfectly reasonable request. I don't know that there's any specific reason that it is the way that it is, other than that's kind of how our default scroll pane behavior is that it starts at the top, starts at one end, goes to the other, and there's not currently sort of built-in support for a wraparound. But like I say, it sounds like a perfectly reasonable request to me. I'll highlight that and see what we can do. Next question here is from You Tomatoed. Okay. If Ishii is standing only next to human, shouldn't she still be standing next to a non-human, since she's standing next to a kobold, even though that kobold is a human? What if we choose Hugh's did we say spec?
So I'm pretty sure that this sounds like Ishii's ability was probably probably the way it was designed is it looks through the tags on a champion and makes sure that there's no human tag there. The problem is that, as everyone knows, human is both a kobold and a human. Because they're obviously a human. I mean, they look like a human. They're standing in a big robe like a human would be. It does feel like that's something that is probably just because of the way that ability is implemented. But I also don't know how else we would implement it without just having an express list of other races. So it feels like kind of an edge case that is probably just going to remain in place, because I can't think of a more clever way to put that ability together. Plus, it's kind of funny. It's thematically, it kind of makes sense. Human is a human. What are you talking about?
All right. Do you figure we got time for that last question there, or are we?
Sure, if you want to go for it. Yeah.
Sure. It's an easy one anyway.
Yeah.
Last question here is from Kinravip. If all familiars do exactly the same thing, why is there such a wide variety of prices for them in the gem store?
Yeah, I mean, this is a good question. You should write down your answer, Dave, and I'll write down my answer, and then we'll see if we get the same answer. But from my perspective, this is done just for progression purposes, to have something to shoot for. If they all cost, say we just took the price and then we added that up, we just averaged it out, so they all cost, say, 100,000. Well, you'd start the game and you wouldn't be able to afford any, and you wouldn't be able to afford any until you'd gotten 100,000 gems, which would be quite a bit to do. So the way it is now, you can get one when you've sort of got 100 or 250 gems, and then you can get another one when you get 1,000 gems, and you kind of work your way up and have a goal to go for. As you get more powerful in the game and you can get gems faster, the goals sort of scale up with that. So that is the reason that there is a wide variety of prices.
Yep, that's my answer as well. Progression.
Perfect.
Yep.
Game design 101.
Cool. And so that, I think, is all we've got time for. I was going to make one note because I was watching the chat here, just to the Mickey, to let him know Trevor did pass on your post to us, and we did, that was shared with the team, and we did read through it in detail. Not something that we have time to discuss on the stream, of course, especially not with 2 minutes remaining. But we definitely got it, and understand your feelings for sure.
Yeah, so that's all the time we have for today's episode. If we didn't get to your question, don't worry, you'll have another opportunity. We plan to be back here again live at this same time next week. Before we sign off, though, we'd like to thank our tireless mods, Mars and Martin. They copy your questions into our questions doc and generally make things awesome. So thanks, guys.
Of course, to all of you for hanging out, watching the stream, asking such great questions, and enjoying the game, because without you, no one here would get to do what we do.
We'd have to do something else.
Can't think of anything else at the moment, so. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Bye.